Last week, we made a video about the Musical Fidelity A1 integrated amplifier, and that video has clocked up 100,000 views already. That's like less than a week. But I still have 3 more points to make about the A1.
This episode is brought to you by AudioQuest. With products to fill every need and prices to suit every budget, AudioQuest is made for you. Visit AudioQuest.com for more information.
Now, firstly, I wrapped my initial coverage by saying that the A1's strong dynamics cast it as the Klipsch or the Zoo or the JBL of the amplifier world. So you might reasonably ask, didn't I try the A1 with one of those speakers? And actually, yes, I did. So the day before I left Berlin, I connected the Zoo DWX to the A1. And I gotta say, this is one hell of a combination. As we might expect, we get robust dynamics and a very strong musical presence. But the A1 also gives us a more pleasing treble than the NAD C3050 or the Marantz Stereo 70S. It just sounds more lively, more lit up, but not in a bright kind of way, just more vivid. So judged on sound quality alone, I'd take the A1 over either of those rivals in a heartbeat, and especially for vinyl playback. So to be clear, the phono stage in the A1 is streets ahead of that found inside the WIM Ultra. But there is a caveat here, because we can't turn the A1's volume dial much past 8 o'clock before it gets too loud with the Zoo DWX. Now, how loud is too loud for me? Well, at least for my personal tastes, it's over 90 dB as measured in the listening position. And that might be because the Zoo are 12 ohm nominal and 95 dB sensitive, so they're not really like any other speaker on the planet. But what about using the A1's direct mode to bypass the preamp's 10 dB of extra gain? Now, yes, that gives us more volume wheel latitude, but even with SPLs matched, direct mode doesn't sound as robust or as present as normal mode. So in direct mode, the A1 sounds lighter and airier and loses some of its low-end heft and mid-range meat. And this situation reminds me of when we have a DAC running line level, so full volume, into an active preamp, which does the volume control, and then into a power amp. And then we remove the preamp to have the volume controllable DAC run directly into the power amp. For me, DAC direct sounds comparatively weaker and tonally diluted. I've done this experiment numerous times over the years, and it's a similar case with direct mode and normal mode on the A1. But this also points to the major reason why I chose to keep the KEF Q Concerto Meta as the primary speaker in my original A1 video. The A1's 25 watts per channel into 8 ohm power rating, I think, is extremely deceptive because this amplifier drives the KEF just fine and with decent, if not spectacular, bass drive control. If you want the best bass drive control, then you want the NAD, the Class D amp. But as Srajan Ebain said to me on the weekend when we were doing our podcast, he said, this will create a mental disconnect for some people because what they expect in theory from 25 watts per channel will not be what they get in reality. And that's what I find. But I guess in some ways I'm kind of used to like spec sheets numbers not really translating into the real world. But that's a bit of a blow to shortcut culture, isn't it? Because it really underscores the importance of trying gear in real life instead of making assumptions about it based on the spec sheet numbers. Now that's my second point. So what's my third? Well, this concerns the A1's price because the original sold for somewhere between £200 and £300 in the UK in 1985. So using the Bank of England's inflation calculator, that comes to between £600 and £900 in today's money. But the 2023 A1 is stickered at £1,500. So we have to ask, why is that? Now, as I said in my original video, this new A1 is not a carbon copy of the original 1980s model that was designed by Tim de Paravicini. I can never say that guy's name, Tim de Paravicini. Anyway, in that original video, I listed the changes that the new owners of Musical Fidelity have made to the A1's design. And at the risk of repeating myself, this includes, but is not limited to, a larger chassis, a motorized volume pot, a remote control, and this is important actually, better spec'd internal components for improved longevity. Because I said in the original video that the original A1, I think, suffered from parts longevity or parts giving up because of the heat, right? So when your amp is heavily biased into Class A and generates a lot of heat, you really need parts that are going to last longer than they would otherwise with less heat. And the new A1 is made in Taiwan. It says so on the back panel. Now, one thing we don't know is if Taiwan factory worker wages in 2023 or 4 are higher or lower than British factory worker wages were in the 1980s. But we do know that global shipping and packaging costs are higher now than they were in 1985. So when you make your amplifier in Taiwan, you have to move units to the USA, New Zealand, Australia, Canada, Europe, and Japan. And those countries' local distributors have to cover their costs and make a profit. And so too do the dealers that sell the A1 on the high street. But real estate is now far more expensive than it was 40 years ago, especially in the UK, Canada, and Australia, and I'm sure many other countries. So covering costs in 2024 as a distributor or as a dealer is much more expensive than it was in the 1980s. Now, I'm not saying any of this to try and justify the A1's price because there are a lot of unknowns here, but I'm simply pointing out that the factors that contribute to a hi-fi product's street price are complicated, and they're far more complicated than just popping the lid, having a look at what's inside, and then totting up a rough total of the internal components, and then adding a profit margin, because that's just super reductive thinking. So I guess this kind of complexity and the number of unknowns that we're dealing with here is another blow to shortcut culture. And that shortcut culture really is based around only using our eyes to judge an audio product's performance and therefore its value. And that's easily done when we rarely leave the house and we spend most of our time on the internet. Anyway, if you like this video, like or subscribe below and drop us a real life matters in the comment section below to let us know that you watched this video to the very end. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching. Testing 1, 2 for reverb. Yeah, I can hear the reverb of the hallway.